The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Supernatural. Magic. Ghosts. You have clones. Bigfoot. Extraterrestrial. Psychic energy.
The Calling.
And good evening, everybody. It's another Wednesday night, and of course, it's the Calling Radio Show with Kimberly Juarez. Right, Kimberly?
Kimberly. We lost Kimberly.
Oh, no. Or she's frozen or something.
Yeah.
She's frozen in time. Oh, you could barely hear her.
Am I really?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're froze up. And then, of course, the one, the only, Willow Le Marchant.
Hello, Jerry.
Hello. So what's new, ladies?
I'm dieting.
Well, that's something different to come up with. Hey, what are you doing today? Oh, I'm dieting.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah.
And how long is that going to last?
Probably the rest of my life at this point.
Well, for me, it lasted, I think it was 16.3 minutes.
Oh, no. I've been doing really good. I've already lost 5 pounds in 1 week.
You know, it's funny. I'll drive past a bakery. I gained 21 pounds.
Yeah, I don't drive by them.
No, I don't even look at them. God. So, Kim, are you back with us?
I think so.
Oh, yeah, you're back.
Yeah.
Yay.
I don't know what happened. That was weird.
Everybody clap now. Kimmy's back.
Yay!
Yay!
Goofballs.
And tonight, just to let everybody know, we are doing the show naked. Yeah.
At least Jerry is, I guess. I don't know about
Yeah.
I just wanted to get your reaction. Okay.
You should have seen Willow's face then.
Right? I was like, okay, we're dressed from the waist up, though, right? We're good, right?
Yeah. Wait. All right, Willow, who do we got tonight for a guest?
Well, tonight we have the one, the only Wendy Adair. She is a modern exorcist, hypnotist, and energy healer. And we just have to welcome Wendy to the show.
Welcome,
Thank you.
Wendy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, after I talked to you when we were doing your reading, I just knew that you would be the perfect fit for our listeners. I think this is going to be a fun show.
I hope so. And I loved our reading. I thought that was so much fun.
Oh, yeah, of course. And then we found out that we both do similar things, and it was just perfect.
Yeah, I think there was as much conversation as there was reading. I was really excited after we finished up. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. So tell us a little bit about what you do and what you're trying to build, because I know you're kind of still in that building process too.
I am. I'm constantly in a state of building and then tearing it down and rebuilding it. And I am a clinical hypnotherapist who specializes in exorcism, also known as spirit releasement therapy. I was educated by a psychotherapist who was very well versed in this. And honestly, when I got my education, I thought, oh my God, I'll never use this. This is crazy. And I believed in the supernatural. I've always believed in it. I've had experiences with it. And when it came to this part of my training, I'm like, are you kidding me? This is real? This is a thing? I'm like, whatever, I'll do whatever I need to do to help my clients. And when I got through during my internship and then through my internship, it was one person after another coming to me for this. And I'm like, okay, okay. And it really cemented it for me when somebody who has no belief in any of this came to me just out of curiosity. We did a session, and he had a very, very dark energy come out who knew information about me he could not have known. Oh. And so I'm like, okay, I believe now. And so I decided, once I started doing more and more of this, just a joy would wash over me when I would do it. So I decided I would specialize in it. And I started first with paranormal investigators, just because, people are walking into known places, and if they're not well versed in protection, or they're just getting started and they don't have a lot of experience with those things, they come out with attachments, or possibly come out with attachments. And then I moved into a broader group of people, and that didn't work for me. It was too broad. And now I'm focusing only on spirit releasement, exorcism, and its adjacent therapies like soul retrieval, past life regression, those kinds of things.
Awesome.
My goal is that the everyday average person who goes to work, pays their bills, feeds their kids, understands that everything we do is spiritual in nature, and that there is a darker side to that too, and you have to be aware. And it's okay. You don't have to be afraid of it. There are ways to deal with it. And it doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean you're off the deep end in New Age philosophy or whatever. This happens to most people at some point in their lives.
Yeah, it does. So who else has some great questions for Wendy?
I do, of course, and also anybody in the on the chat room. If you do have a question, send us the question, and we'll make sure that it's asked to Wendy. So when it comes to the attachments and stuff like that, you were talking about protection. Is there certain types of demonic or evil or whatever that can actually skate around protection, or is there a certain protection that really just doesn't quite work?
Because I believe that, and in my experience, in protection and really everything else is intention based, the strength of your intention really is the key to that. So the more you practice and the more it becomes second nature, the better that will be. So it works because I have not received, I've done, I don't know how many of these sessions, and I have not had an attachment attached to me from a client. So it works. But you have to practice with it. And it isn't just for this. It can just be for emotional vampires, where they're feeding off of your energy. It can work with those people. There are a lot of people, and I'm one of those people. They will just walk up to me and tell me their entire life story. And I've never seen them before, will never see them again. It can work with that when you're not in the mood for that, or when you're feeling a little low or whatever. You can put up that kind of a boundary so that they're not coming to you. The more you practice those things, the better they'll work with the darker stuff too.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Kimmy?
So you say that so then you must have had like paranormal, like some type of paranormal activity or anything before you got into this type of thing?
I've had general paranormal experiences where I have been in haunted locations, and I've known. I also, after having some where I knew what was happening, I also recognized that back throughout my life I've had some experiences that I didn't realize then were paranormal. But it isn't like some people who end up doing release work who have had a horrifying experience themselves and they learn to deal with it and they help others. That I haven't had. I learned it through hypnotherapy training.
Okay.
Interesting. So we got a question here from somebody in the chat room, Paranormal Writer, and his question is, when you release a dark entity, where does it go? Aren't you worried it'll get stuck in the space you released it in, or stuck to another bystander, or question mark?
And that's really the great thing about the process that I learned, is that you make sure it has somewhere to go, and you make sure that the client sees it or experiences it going, and it doesn't just. It's unlike the movies where it's, they cast a demon out and they don't send it anywhere, right? So it just hops on to the next person passing by. This process does not do that. This process sends it into whatever progression is, quote unquote, for that energy. It can be sequestered. It can move into a positive space. It just depends. And that comes from conversation with the entity and whatever it is comfortable with. So there is a bit of negotiation there to get the entity to leave with the understanding that it can't come back to the person and it is going beyond our plane.
Excellent. So we have another question in the chat room, Mufi, whose question is, can a person who is possessed walk among us undetected?
Yes.
And how do we... Okay, we need more on that one there.
Well, sure. Okay, so there are different levels of it, of attachment and possession. So it can be something as simple as somebody in your family passes and they think they know more about how you should live your life than you do, so they stick around and they try and influence you to live your life the way they think you should live it. So great Aunt Bessie or whoever, well-intentioned, but not right for you. And not right for her either. She needs to move on. So it can be something like as simple as that, all the way to the continuum of full-blown possession where they have control over what's going on with you. However, you're still there. You're still inside there. You just may not have as much control as you would like to have of your body. And that entity is influencing your behavior and your actions and your interactions with other people. But they may know something weird is going on. They may not know how to put their finger on it, though. So that person could potentially walk around and live a life that isn't theirs, and nobody would really understand what's going on.
I have a question. So what do you think, what's your opinion, if someone was possessed as a child, okay, let's say a 4-year-old, and they've had this in them for decades, if this entity has taken over for that long of a period to where they're one with it, they know exactly what they're doing at all times because it's almost like they've become like a psychopath. So do you think that that person could be exorcised? If so, is there any of that person even left after that length of a time?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that I've come into contact with a person at that extreme a level, but I would theorize from the experiences that I do have that, yes, the person could be exorcised. However, it would be dependent on how attached they are to the possessing entity. Right. Because people can become just as attached to the entities as the entities are to them. So it would depend on that. If, let's say, they are not attached and they want it gone, it may depend on that person and the resilience of that person and how much they have seen that's positive in the world that helps them not go down the path that this entity has taught them or done. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Because just like some children who are horrifyingly abused become abusers, and some do not. Some will suffer trauma that they may be a victim all their lives, and some become advocates. So you could find that maybe a child like that ends up going into the priesthood after an exorcism, or into clergy, or some other way to help spiritually. But you could also find they end up in prison.
Yeah, well, the person that I was relating to about the question, that person has been in prison a couple of times, and I know for a fact has murdered somebody. And so I think it's almost like they've gotten too attached to that entity as well. Where this entity had originally come from was based in voodoo, and there is nothing wrong with voodoo, but this person practiced the dark arts of it and passed this entity onto their grandson at 4 years old. And at that point, 4 days later, that grandfather died. It was like that was his life force.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it left him, went into the child, then he passed.
Yeah, well, it could be a lineage type entity. It could be something that's been passed from person to person within that family line. And so would you say the grandfather?
Yeah.
The grandfather may have had
Bokur, yeah.
So he could have had that entity, and that may have driven him to practice. I agree, voodoo is not harmful. Nothing is harmful until you choose to make it so.
Exactly.
And so he chose to do that, possibly because of an entity. And so when he passed that on, maybe he was ready to go. Maybe he was tired of, maybe he didn't have the energy anymore.
Yeah. Well, he was old. He was like, I think 80 or something like that. He was older. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, it's a very interesting story.
Yes.
But that psychopath tried to kill me. So, it's a long story, but yeah. I was just curious about your opinion on that.
Well, hopefully something can be done. If you haven't already, something can be done to end. If that's like a lineage type of thing, something can be done to stop that.
Yeah, that's one of those things I guess you and I are going to have to talk about, because I don't have any contact with him anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, legally no contact with him anymore.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, but I'm just afraid that he'll go on to harm somebody else because it's still there.
Right.
Okay. Question, Kimberly, do you want to take Moofy's question and Paranormal Writer's question?
Whoa. I do not see them. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
So, follow-up question. Could some evil people like Hitler have been possessed?
Yes. I don't know that Hitler was. I think there was a wide variety of things going on there, obviously. But yes, definitely. Anybody can be.
And then Paranormal Writer says, not so much of a question as observed. I totally believe that you're saying my father passed away in January, and whenever I miss him or talk to him, I always feel good and warm feeling. He doesn't feel stuck or attached, but definitely feel his presence in a good way. So that, I guess he's just asking, can that be? Can it be a good thing when they are around? I'm assuming that's what he's asking.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you're having that experience and comfort. That does not mean it's attached. Attachment generally is something that is beyond the permission of both parties, and somebody who's coming back to give you love and comfort, and or higher angels or ascended masters, any of those kinds of groups of entities do not attach. So what you have is not an attachment, you have a visitation.
Okay, there's a second part to that too.
Oh.
Kimberly, right underneath there.
Oh, I think bad attachments are just as real. Okay. Right? Is that, I think that's it. So, can I ask a question? So, what is the difference between your modern exorcism and like people who've done it in the past, like Christian, Catholics? What is the difference between the modern and, I mean, now and the difference between before?
There are a few differences. One is I do not believe that they're all demonic. I do believe that deceased humans can attach. I do not believe in, and the process that I use does not believe in just forcing out, just a forceful ejection. There needs to be, like the question was asked earlier, there needs to be a place for it to go. I don't believe in chastising. I don't, basically, okay, let me rephrase this. Basically, these are all varying stages of bullying, right? Attachments and possessions are varying stages of bullying. Well, that requires a level of compassion to understand why the bullying is occurring and what to do from there to stop it and to move that person into a positive space. And that's what this process does. Okay. Also, I like to separate it from Hollywood's version of exorcism because this is nothing like Hollywood's version of exorcism. Right. If somebody came to watch what I was doing, they would be bored because it's conversation versus pea soup and head spinning.
Right.
Yeah. So I do have a question for you. So hoodoo, voodoo, tarot card reading, scribing, pendulums, Ouija boards, all that type of things. How much is that, or could that affect the world of demonic or evil of coming into our regular plane?
If you know what you're doing, you can use any of those things. If you know, what your intention is to be spiritually healthy, you can use any of those things. Those are, well, of course, voodoo is a religion and hoodoo is a practice, but Ouija boards, pendulums, tarot cards, those are tools. And you can choose to weaponize them. You can choose to use them unsafely, like, playing with a gun or playing with matches. Both a gun and matches can be tools that are beneficial, but it depends on what you do with them. So if you're being safe, if you learn to protect yourself and you learn to set an intention, then you usually will not have any problems.
Okay. Do you want to take Karen's question, Willow?
Yeah. So Karen wants to know, so you use hypnotherapy on spirits that are attached to someone. Is that how you are doing it? Or are you using, I think her question is, are you using energy work? How are you doing that?
So I am using hypnosis on the client, the physical client in the room or on the internet, Skype or whatever. That person will look for that energy, will engage that energy, and that energy will either speak through the client to me or will communicate in some way. It's usually a telepathic feeling with the client, and the client will relay that information to me.
Okay.
Yeah, good answer. Does that answer you, Karen?
And also, too, I have another question for you. Sorry. When it comes to, like Reverend Michael Schrader had, we've done a couple exorcisms together, and I've done one with the member of my team. And one of the things in the verses that we say is to drag the demons into the pit. Now, the pit is that, what exactly is the pit? From what I understand and what I was told about the pit is that Lucifer himself will not bring any type of demon out of the pit. Once they've reached the pit, they're done for. You know, it sounds kind of crazy, but so like if you go after his number 2 guy or something, and you banish him into the pit, and there's just no way that, or Lucifer doesn't even care about him to get him back out. What is the pit exactly?
What I practice is non-denominational, non-religious, and while I recognize that people have their religious beliefs and experiences, unless they come to me and say, I want this done based on my Catholic faith or my Christian faith or whatever, then I don't generally use religious based approaches. I can, and I have, but I don't usually do that. So the experience that I have had is the dark ones that I have interacted with, and it's been quite a few. They have all been more afraid of the void, which is cold, black, and isolated. And they are far more afraid of that than they are of, I've never had any of them say anything about hell or the pit. It's all about the void.
Okay.
But again, we're talking about metaphor, so it's the intention that we're going with. So you can use any metaphor for that intention, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Do you believe that, when it comes to negativity just in a person themselves, that they can manifest their own demon or their own dark energy, then that will further make them more and more stronger in that kind of way?
Yes. And that's one of the things that I also do is help people with their own personal demons, not their external demons, but their internal demons. And we do that all the time. Anything that we fear, any self-sabotaging things that we have, those are based in a protection that we're trying to create for ourselves against some kind of pain, rejection, whatever. And so sometimes those things that may really be a molehill turn into mountains. And so we could use hypnosis to go into the subconscious to turn them back into molehills, to discover what's going on there and negotiate with that created energy to work a more beneficial job for us.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'll tell you what, we're so close to break, and we've got just a lot of questions. I even have an email here from some of the troops asking questions about this, which is nice. So what we'll do is, why don't we take a break a little bit early, and then we can come back and go through the rest of the questions. Is that okay, guys?
Sounds good to me.
Great.
Mm-hmm. All right. So hold on, everybody. We're going to go to break right now, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.
In order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. Tune in every Monday at 10 o'clock for Dark Sun Rising on the Para-X Radio Network.
Sure, you're wondering why you received this tape from a random stranger.
What was that?
What?
I heard something.
Like what?
Like a gunshot.
But is it really random? Am I really a stranger? Or are we connected in some way to a web of lies and deceit? Possibly murder?
I'm sorry about our argument the other day. I'd like to make it up to you. In your office. I've been such a bad girl. I need you to correct me.
Okay. I'll unlock the door. Hello, Ben! How
Blood Noir is a crime and horror anthology show. Stories about people caught in desperate times and only have one way out.
And we're back. This is Jerry with The Calling, along with Kimberly and Willow. And, hey, what's the best thing to do on a weeknight or a weekend? Well, I'll tell you what, if you don't have a life like me, then the best thing that you can do is actually listen to Para X. And where can you find that? You can find it on any one of those nights at www.paraxradionetwork.com. Not just tonight where you're listening to The Calling right now. Yeah, The Calling, hello, every night, every Wednesday night. And if you haven't... Oh, I had this planned out so well. So if you did not start at the beginning of the show and you're wondering what the first half was about, well, guess what? Tomorrow, it'll be on our website. Not just our website, but it'll be on our YouTube channel, too. No, say it's not so. Yes, after 4 o'clock, it'll be there. So, but there is so many great shows. You got The Gathering every Tuesday night from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock Central Standard Time. You can figure it out for Eastern Standard Time. That's easy, just add an hour. And Stephanie and Heidi, they have a great time. You have Geeks Paranormal right after us. The ladies from Geeks, they're so cute. No, there's tons of other shows, too. Every night's got something, so get into it. Have some fun. All right, let's get back to the show here. Kimberly.
So we got Steve B. says, Do you believe there are familiar spirits out there?
Familiar as in we know them, or familiar as in like a familiar? Someone's familiar.
I'm not sure what he means by that one. And then Karen says, you've mentioned having compassion for why the spirits are attached. I imagine that some kind of persuasion via hypnotized person occurs, and only by an extension the entity is also hypnotized. LOL, I might have made no sense. Paranormal Writer says, I agree, the void is a good reason to be grateful for life. It really is a privilege to be in the body on a beautiful planet, no matter the struggle. I think that's what we got. There we go.
So the familiar question, if we look at it as, can we have attachments that we are familiar with, like people we know who have passed? Yes, we can. We can also have complete strangers. We can also have earth-based entities, elementals. We can have archetypal energies. There are all kinds of them. I actually had a client who had an extraterrestrial entity attached to her.
I've heard of that. Heard of that. So my question is to you, Wendy, how do you protect yourself? How do you keep from these, becoming attached to you?
Staying very grounded before, during, and after a session. Also, I was taught a mantra when I was trained, and I will use that. Mm-hmm. But I find that helping my clients be protected, as far as creating any kind of protective space for them, is grounding enough for me. I don't know if you've ever seen the Matrix. Mm-hmm. When Neo finally recognizes that he's the one, and Smith is shooting at him, and all the bullets, he just puts his hand up, and all the bullets just drop. Right. I kind of get into a zone like that. I don't think I'm the one. It's nothing egoic like that. It's just that's right. I feel like very often just saying, no, you don't have access to this space, meaning my body or my energy around my body. So it's gotten so commonplace for me that I really don't know how to describe it, frankly.
Okay.
Oh,
going,
and then
kids.
the other half of his question was about possibly about familiars. Like somebody may have a familiar in their practice, and yeah, I think that can attach as well. Also, something like an egregore can attach.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of ways that energy can attach to us. And I would like to say something before we go on to the next question. The reason that I like to do it this way with hypnosis is because I am working directly with a living client and an energy. What that does is it gives the client the opportunity to interact with that energy in a conscious way. It makes them aware of, why did this entity attach? You don't necessarily need to be afraid of it, because fear is the worst thing that you can feel.
Right.
And how do I keep it from happening again? So when we're going through this process, they have an understanding of the whole process. And as much as I believe in the ability of intuitives to release, I do think there's something to be said for the client actually having to participate in that process.
Okay.
I had one client from South America who, or potential client, who wanted me to do remote work for him. And I said, asked why. And he said, well, because, I'm from whatever country he was from. And I said, no, I won't do the remote work. I want you to do it with me. We can do it on Skype. And it doesn't matter what the time difference is. We'll work that out. He wouldn't do it. He said he'd been to several people who'd released spirits from him over the years. And my question was, why is it still happening?
Right.
Why are you
Right.
still getting attachment?
I was just thinking that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if somebody is going through the process and they can see it and they can feel it and they can experience it in a visceral manner, then they can learn how to keep it from happening to them again.
Okay. Okay.
Steve B did describe, or give the description of what a familiar spirit was, so that we know. He says a familiar spirit is a demonic spirit that feels good and deceives someone to make them think they have good powers.
Yes, that does happen. That often happens at the beginning stages of something, to try and convince somebody that there's not a problem there, that they're there to help.
Right.
Okay.
Very good. All right. What is your name? Willow. Oh,
Yes.
I'm really having a bad day today.
Yes, Jerry.
You were talking about when we were just kind of sitting around talking and stuff about readings and things. Maybe I caught it wrong, but readings can get into a person and cause problems. Did I hear that right or no?
No, I don't. When I do readings for someone, it is, I work with spirit guides that are around them but not attached to them. And it basically will help guide them by, getting answers or confirmations, guidance, basically spiritual guidance. That's not really, causing an attachment.
Okay. So
or I wouldn't be doing it. And
Wendy, can I ask a? Go ahead.
Well, I've had spirits. When I've been doing the clearings, the exorcisms, I've had those elementals or demons, wherever you want to call them, try to influence me, and I kind of laughed. I actually did. I laughed out loud. I shouldn't have, probably, but basically told them, no, you don't have power over me. And you're right. You just have to put your hand up and go, no, not in this space. You don't get this space.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Kimberly. Sorry.
I lost my thought of train. I was going to ask you something that I thought it was kind of important. Now I can't remember because I was listening to. I can't remember. I'll remember right now. Just go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, so I have a question here that actually came from one of the troops. I'm not for sure exactly where they're at. They can never say where they're at. But the question is, what are the steps to casting out demons or deliverance? That's one question. And the other question is, how can I conduct deliverance on myself? Can a person actually recognize that they have a demon? And how can they get rid of it themselves?
Sure, a person can recognize it. So I would suggest not doing it yourself if you're not already experienced in participating in this somehow. I even will go to somebody else. I'll go to my teacher or a colleague and ask them to help me if I suspect it in myself, because it's very difficult to play both roles. So being that you're in the military and probably, overseas, and not in a position to ask for help, if you can recognize it, you can at least keep it probably tamped down so it's not influencing you as much. Not being in fear is a big key to that. Fear is like candy, and it will lap it up. So the more in fear and in rage that you are, you're feeding it. And that may be difficult to say to somebody who's in a war zone, because of the extreme emotion that I would assume people are going through in that type of situation. If you suspect that that's what's going on, then please contact someone, and I will see if I can work with you through Skype or Zoom, and I would be happy to do that.
Great. Awesome. Okay. Good. And let's see. Another question is, so prayers are for personal deliverance, they're asking.
Well, yeah, because prayer is really setting an intention. So if you're using that intention and the more powerfully you believe in that intention, especially the more, I don't want to say positive because that sounds like rainbows pooping unicorn or unicorns pooping rainbows, but it is important that you develop that relationship with whomever you're praying to, as well as the intention behind the prayer. And you can potentially just get to the point where the entity just doesn't want to stick around with you because you become boring. You're not feeding it anymore. So yes, if you're doing that, keep doing it.
Okay. Ladies, do you have questions? Because I do have a couple more questions, Kim, from another couple of the troops.
Real quick, Wendy.
Uh-huh.
Have you most of your cases been successful, or have you had to turn away from a client at one point because it's over and over?
No, most of my cases have been successful because I'm picky about the client. And that's because, and there are several reasons for that. One of them is if they have been diagnosed or suspected of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, have hallucinations or delusions, I won't work with them without their mental health care professional agreeing to it and supporting it. Because you can, if you're doing that, you can buy into, you're basically confirming whatever delusion they're having.
Right.
And that just increases their break with reality. So I strongly suspect that many people who have schizophrenia have attachments. And if I get somebody, I might consider doing remote work on my own for them. But those are the only people I generally, and it's not turning them away, it's just get this support and I'll be happy to work with you. But they usually don't come back. But they do call me up. I had one guy who would call me about every few months, and he would use a different name trying to get me to work with him. Super, super sweet guy. And he had already told me that he had been diagnosed as schizophrenic. So I just
Okay.
would tell him, have you gotten, I was misdiagnosed. Well, get me something in writing from your doctor that says you were misdiagnosed, or get your doctor on board and I will be happy to help you. And he eventually stopped calling.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so another one of the questions that I have is, again, one of the troops is asking, how do they get demons to leave my dreams alone? They feel that it's not just what they do. They're pretty much okay with what they've had to do. But now all of a sudden it's like something keeps sucking on them in the middle of the night, and they're having very tough times trying to concentrate on anything. They know that they should go get some help, but do you feel it really could happen with demons in the dream, or is that going to be looked at as he's going crazy?
Oh, no, I get them. I get demons in my dreams. So if you are able to teach yourself lucid dreaming, you can kick their butts until they just don't want to come back anymore. They can't feed off of you if you're lucid dreaming. If you cannot get yourself to the point of lucid dreaming, then reaching out for somebody to help you. And again, please contact me directly, or if you don't mind, guys, contact the show, and I will see if I can help you through that.
Very good. Very good. That's okay. Yeah, we'll make sure that any kind of they email us. We'll make sure we get the information to you right away. Now, I have one more. It's very much. I've got to learn. Kimberly and Willow, go to the next question. You guys go ahead and go. This one is going to take some finessing to ask because it may cross a border. So go ahead, Kimberly and Willow.
Okay. What has been your toughest situation that almost like frightened you at a point?
There were two. And the first one that I'll tell you about, and I'm not going to use anything that will identify the clients because I do obviously confidentiality. But there were two. The first one was right after I got out of my internship, and I had a client who was trying to kill a significant other. And that one, it didn't scare me, except that I didn't know this person and I would be working with them, and I didn't know if there was going to be any violence. I was not the only person in the room with the client, and everything worked out fine. Client went through 2 sessions. We removed the entity, and the client seemed to do very, very well afterwards. So that one was frightening, just mostly because I hadn't had the experience yet. That was the first one in the real world application without my clinician, supervising, that would, potentially be violent. The other one that happened was somebody who completely did not believe, came in out of curiosity. We ended up going for almost 2 hours with this entity that just passed through. And I will tell you that the scariest thing about that is how not scary that demonic entity was. Other than calling me every name in the book that you can imagine, right? Very filthy language, all this stuff, which that's fine. He had a very good sense of humor, and humor is really a really good tool in this kind of work. However, he was also using it. And this became, it was a game of cat and mouse, basically. And it just was apparently passing by, recognized what was going on, and wanted a challenge. I did get it out of that client, but I have felt it around me. It's the only one that did not move on, that I can recall anyway. And in the process, that client spoke. Well, okay, that entity spoke through the client and told me things about myself that the client could not have possibly known. When the client came out and we were doing the debrief afterwards, he said he felt like his self had been shoved over and he had no control. He had been writhing in the chair. He'd been calling me every name in the book, and the client was horrified. He said, I'm so sorry. I would never call you those things. I'm like, no, I know it wasn't you. Don't worry about it. So that one, because it wasn't scary, was actually scarier.
Yeah.
Because of the game playing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had them try to oppress me and try to make suggestions for me to do things during the clearing, and it was I found it more annoying.
Right.
than,
right.
You know, it's like, come on.
Right.
You know why we're here.
Right.
You know, you don't belong in this person.
Right.
So
the other one that's kind of interesting, and it wasn't scary for me, but it did scare the client, was a situation that we call nesting, where there are several entities at one time. There's usually a core entity that is in charge of all the other attached entities, and the core entity was very, very, very dark. And there was just a succession of other entities that had to be released.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you hear about that, but it's very rare. So it's interesting that you had a client like that.
I've had a couple.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Okay. Do you guys mind if I ask the final question?
Go
Okay.
ahead.
So this is from a soldier, female, in, overseas. And her big problem is from all the children that are being found right now at the residential schools buried. Okay, here's her question about it, is that even if a person is clergy, it doesn't mean that they are holy and that they too can be demonic. But even if they lived years afterwards and have always done good ever since then, they still have not admitted and rebuked what the demons had made them do. If it's demons of the torturing and everything of these poor children from these residential schools, why has not the Vatican or the Catholic Church has said that they at least apologize and offer some consoling to the survivors of this, and from the ones that have lost their brothers and sisters and children from that? What so that is a form of demonic possession, is it not?
Well, it could be, but it could also be somebody who was just born bad or became bad. I would say this. Regardless of whether you have a demonic attachment or not, you are ultimately responsible for the actions that happen by you, whether that's your body with someone else driving or your whole you doing that action. Because a court of law is not going to say, well, he was possessed, so we're going to discharge or drop the charges. You are ultimately responsible. Whether that priest has a demon or not, I don't know. That remains to be seen unless you have some kind of literature that shows something he said or done that would imply that. Regardless, he should have been held accountable. And I think it's impossible to know what that cleric would have gone through afterwards. If everything they did was good after that, then that's going to be between him and God. There's nothing that we can do.
Okay,
I can't answer.
Yeah, but it's more than just one. We're talking schools of nuns and priests that have done this. And her last thing that she just sent me just now is just to remind everybody there's no pride in genocide. And that was it. She's having a really tough time with this. I guess her aunt and uncle both were lost in the schools. And even the ones that made it through sometimes are still lost in the schools.
I'm very sorry for your losses. And I can't imagine the trauma that you're feeling around this. And it may be demonic. And it could be something that humans do where they just fall in line, the way the Germans fell in line. Or many of the Germans fell in line, not all of them, obviously. And that's hard to say whether that's psychology or spirituality.
Okay. Kimberly, and we're down to 2 minutes left. Now, if somebody needs to get a hold of you, Wendy, how can they get a hold of you?
You can reach me through my website. There's a contact form, and my website is modernexorcist.com. My email address is Wendy, Wendy, at modernexorcist.com.
Excellent. And the one person did just hear what you said, but they're going to email the show and ask for you to get a hold of them where they're at and Zoom or something like that with them. So, awesome.
That'd be great.
Well, this was a really good guest. Thank you very much, Willow, for finding Wendy.
Well, I knew you'd love her.
So you're going down your list of friends, because I think it started out with someone by the name of Alan, and then now it's down in the W's. So we have an XYZ
that
to
many
get
friends.
to.
Chill out, Jerry. Facebook friends don't count, right? There's over 3,000 of them. We'd be busy all the time.
Yeah, but most of them already emailed me and told me, we really don't like her. No,
Probably.
I'm kidding. It's me. Well, we want to, thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate seeing all these faces in the chat room. My God, Paranormal Writer. I've got a show I need to do with him. And, wow, Geeks Paranormal, there they are. But they didn't yell when they came here, so they were so quiet.
They snuck in.
They did. They usually are like, whoop, whoop. They must not have had enough wine yet. Anyway, I want to thank all the troops for coming. Thanks, Para X and Sarge. You're the bomb. Fist bump, Sarge. And thank you, ladies. Thank you again, Wendy.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And we'll see you guys all next week.